Hi friends, as usual I'm super excited to see you here. If you are meeting for the first time, I'm Uma Shankar Pandey and this is the Dr. USP channel. I host videos on media, communication, statistics and research on this channel. To stay updated with the latest videos on this channel, I urge you to consider subscribing to the channel. French intellectuals Jacques Derrida and Jacques Lacan challenged the notion of accepting knowledge or truth as a given. They heralded the field of post-structuralism. Let's find out what is post-structuralism. One of the main dictums of post-structuralism is that there is no world that exists independently of our interpretations. In an earlier video, we've seen how people live their lives within the context of larger social, cultural and political structures. These structures shape and determine individual decisions and choices. We saw how meaning is composed of signifiers, which are sounds, images and text, and the signified, which is the mental image or the concept to which the signifiers refer. The signifiers and signified are distinct but inseparable at the same time, like the two sides of a paper. And the relation between the words and the object is arbitrary. So just to emphasize again, a word is a signifier and the object it represents is the signified. A sign is produced when these two elements are brought together. For example, when we write the letters D-O-G, it represents our four-legged friend. Language is taken as the central model of analysis in structuralism. This is because without an enabling structure, it will not be possible to give words meaning. As we've seen, the relation between the signifier and the signified is arbitrary. According to Saussure, meaning is differential, not referential. For example, hot means absence of cold. Post-structuralism proposes that the distinctions we make are not necessarily given by the world around us, but are instead produced by the symbolizing systems we learn. Post-structuralism encourages a way of looking at the world that challenges what comes to be accepted as truth and knowledge. There is no world that exists independently of our own interpretations. So there is no pure truth or no pure knowledge. Discourses facilitate the process by which certain information comes to be accepted as obvious truth. Through language, certain actors, concepts and events are placed in hierarchical pairs or binary oppositions like good or bad, where one element is favored over the other in order to create or perpetuate meanings. Another important thing to understand is the idea of the self or the subject. We are all born organisms and we become subjects. We turn into subjects in the process of learning language. We turn into subjects when we internalize our culture, which is inscribed in the signifying practices that surround us. We'll now discuss some of the important concepts associated with French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, whose work is central to the field of post-structuralism. Jacques Lacan talks about the centrality of the signifier. Signifier, as we know, is a word, text or image. It can be associated with any meaning, not just the conventional one. Lacan uses the term displacement when one thing stands for another, very similar to metaphors. In his psychoanalytic theory, Lacan introduces the concept of the mirror stage. Children between the ages of 6 and 18 months identify with their image in a mirror, and this gives the child the jubilant perception of itself as a whole, in contrast to the child's inner experience of being fragmented and disconnected. Lacan called this false image ego. Lacan talks about the three registers. The imaginary is the world of immediate sensory perceptions of sound, taste, smell, etc. And the symbolic is based on language, and this gives meaning to everything around us. But the real is whatever else is there and which is devoid of meaning. So real is all that cannot be symbolized, and that it is excluded from symbolic and imaginary registers. According to Lacan, the language that helps us make meaning is the other with a capital O. So the other is there before we are, exists outside us and does not belong to us. In the real world, for example, when we are asking for what we want, we necessarily borrow our terms from this other. Just like reality, which we can neither imagine nor symbolize, desire, according to Lacan, is not nameable, since it is in the unconscious realm, which is not part of the consciousness which the language gives us. Our consciousness is shaped by the language. So desire is structural, the consequence of the gap that marks the loss of the real, and it is a perpetual condition. Lacan goes one step further and suggests that the unconscious is structured like a language. It is made up of chains of repressed signifiers, and these repressed signifiers express themselves through slips of the tongue, through associations to dreams, through mistaken actions, and through other psychiatric symptoms. The conventional difference between the subjective and the objective does not hold, because the subject is produced outside itself. It is produced through the other. So the subject is not an absolute origin of its own views. Views are learned from somewhere. At the same time, there is no purely objective knowledge, because knowledge is the property of a subject, and a fact may exist, but knowledge of it doesn't go on without a subject there to do the knowing. So the difference between the subjective and objective does not hold good. We now discuss the contribution of the French philosopher Jacques Derrida. The Western culture and many other cultures depend on binary oppositions which are hierarchical. One term is highly valued and the other term is found wanting. For example, nature is privileged over culture. Speech is privileged over writing. Mind is privileged over body. Western thought assumes that ideas came into being first, and these ideas seek expression in speech, and speech is then transcribed into writing. This is known as logocentrism. So logocentrism puts meaning at the center and imagines that the signified exists in some form of pure consciousness, that there is some real signified. The deconstructive analysis is not to show that there are no differences between speech and writing, between nature and culture, and between mind and body. Rather, it is to displace the opposition between them so as to show that neither term is primary, that there is no natural referent. One thing should not be privileged over the other. So there are no pure freestanding signified. So Derrida explains that there is no transcendental signified, that there is no one true meaning that holds all the others in place, the foundational truth, which is God for some people, or which could be reason for atheists, for example. The signifier differ from other signifiers. So it is not just difference, but it is also difference with an A, because the meaning is deferred. Meaning is inevitably and infinitely deferred or postponed. One signifier leads to a signified, and that itself becomes a signifier, and so on and so forth. According to Derrida, the social theory should break from the search to identify a center or origin of meanings. There is no true knowledge. Meaning is an outcrop of a potentially endless play of signification. Thanks for staying along, friends. As usual, it was a delight having you here. I'll be back with another video very soon. Till then, have a great time.